And so now you are listening to the number one live talk business show in North Carolina. I am Joe Vagnone. This is Local Biz Now. You are listening to 105.9 FM, 100.7 FM, 1400 AM live, where your business matters. Right now, I have a co-host, Brian Kennedy, is the founder of Brian Kennedy Global Coaching and Consulting. Brian is your catalyst for transforming, igniting personal and business growth. Brian, thank you so much, buddy, for co-hosting. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Joe.
So now I'm going to I'm going to introduce another Brian. So don't get confused, okay? I'm going to introduce Brian Shields. Brian is an acquisition entrepreneur and advisor and burnout beater. And I can't wait to ask him about some of that as well. Brian is coming to us from, is it California, my friend?
That's right in Los Angeles.
Brian, thank you so much for doing this. I really do appreciate it. Just so you know, we are live on the radio. We are also live on Facebook and YouTube and that sort of stuff. So I'm gonna try and get as much as I can in. Whenever I tell you we've got to go for a break, it's because we got a commercial we got to hit. So we're gonna try and do that. But first, I want to ask you, Brian, how did we meet? Because this is the first time you and I actually spoke. So do you know how we got together?
Yeah, so I asked my podcast team to find the best business brokers and their shows, if they have them, around the country, and your name came up. And so I listened to a few episodes on YouTube, and thought it would be a good opportunity for us to connect. So I'm here to chat about buying businesses because you're a guy who knows that.
So thank you for that. I appreciate it, Brian. I also went to your website to check you out, make sure if you were worthy of being on the number one business show in North Carolina, you understand? And I started reading your website, looking at all of the stuff you have done, and I thought, man, this guy is going to be great. And then I clicked on the website page, and I saw you look like you're 12 years old. So I thought there's no way this 12-year-old has done everything that I'm reading on this website. So I want people that are listening, now you don't got to go back to 1962, but kind of give them a rundown of some of the things you've done. Because buddy, I got to tell you, man, you have lived several lives in a business setting. So just kind of touch on those, because I want people to know the depth of your experience.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for that. What I hear from that is that I qualify as a big deal.
There you go.
For that. I'm going to make sure to let my family know that, and they can treat me accordingly.
It doesn't matter. They're not going to believe it anyways. You understand it?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong on that. You're not wrong on that. I've been married almost 11 years. Yes. I get it.
That's right.
So I'm originally from Houston. So, shout out to the Texas people on the call. If it's not more confusing to have two Brians who are from Texas. I'm from Houston. I went to college in Atlanta at Morehouse College. And while I was there, I got recruited into an investment banking firm you might have heard of called Lehman Brothers. You've probably heard of it because it's not around anymore. I was at the private equity group there. I went to go work at a private equity firm, and that kind of kickstarted like the first phase of my career, which I like to think of as figuring out how money is actually made. And so being on the ownership side of the business and the table, I really got to understand when people have millions and billions of dollars at risk, what level of professional focus they bring to making sure that the business is successful.
Did you like that level of big business? Because, very few people get up to that thin air,
Yeah, it was definitely a special place. I will say that it taught me a lot, right? Like I worked my tail off. One summer, I was in the office from April until September, and I did not walk outside during sunlight hours at all that entire time. I was just working my butt off, and that was a good training ground. What I found and continue to find is I just like talking to normal people and like having a real conversation about their business or their family, or just like coming up with creative ideas to think about how to solve problems. And it doesn't have to be as uptight or as stressful as what my training ground was. But without that training ground, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Right. Okay, yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So Lehman Brothers, and then after that, where'd you go?
Yeah, I was at this firm called Welsh Carson Anderson and Stowe. It was a private equity firm that did healthcare and technology and business services investments. So I actually did all of the deals that the firm did during the Great Recession, not because of any like special skills I had. I just happened to be right place, right time. So I was the
Right.
only one that got deals done. I learned a ton. The most exciting deal of which was actually based in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Don't take something away from yourself, man. Let me tell you something. If you're doing deals in that environment, you a big deal. You understand that? That's not easy to do.
I tell people that my resume says I've done $4 billion of transactions, and so it's like I've done a lot. I've not slept a lot, that's for sure. And it's funny because, like, I know you touched on the burnout beater thing. That played a role in it. So we can come back to that if it's relevant. But we bought this company in Greensboro, North Carolina, which actually helped me start the next phase of my journey, which was, how do you actually make money? Like, how is money made?
Well, you described it in one of your other interviews, which, by the way, people that are listening, please go to Brian's website. It is a great website. He has been interviewed by some great people. That your website has those interviews on it. It's just great. You describe this as understanding where the EBITDA comes from. I loved that description when you say, hey, I know how to do the numbers. I know how to add it up, but I didn't know actually where they came from. Talk about that, because it is so true.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm sure you experience this too, right? You're a hot shot on like at some finance firm or consulting firm or whatever, and you're like, yeah, I'm putting together slides and I'm doing all this analysis and I've done deals and all this other stuff. And then at some point you're like, if I were to lose this job tomorrow and need to make my own money, you kind of realize I don't actually know how to do that. Like, I don't.
I can't tell you how many people I meet that don't accept what you just said as being real, right?
Exactly.
They think because they know how to count it, they know how to produce it. So this statement that you're making is so real.
Yeah, it's to your point, like I would articulate this to other people. And one memorable story, one of my buddies said, he was like, listen, man, I know where I belong in this ecosystem. I just want to get on a plane, get on my private plane, go to whatever company we own, have a board meeting, get back on my private plane, and be back in time to have dinner at like Nobu or Crusade or something. And I was like, at least we're clear. At least we're clear.
Well, in my world, that statement doesn't exist, so we laugh. But there are worlds that does exist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you, like the only times I've ever been on a private jet were working with that private equity firm. And just like the access and the way that people think about money in that like set of that institution and that level of like accomplishment, it's just totally different. And it rubbed some of my values the wrong way. And I'll just tell you a quick anecdote. Please cut me off if you need to. But I remember during that period where I didn't.
We got
go
about
outside,
1 minute.
Understood. The period I didn't go outside, right? One of the people working on the deal with me was about to have their third kid. His wife was pregnant, and she was going to be induced the following Monday. And this was a Friday. We had to schedule a legal call about something on Monday. So he calls her and is like, hey, I know that this is the third induction that you're going to have, but would you mind moving it to Tuesday? And Joe, I tell you, like, in like cartoons when like the phone is jumping off the table because people are yelling through it so hard. Like that's kind of what was happening. She was like cursing and like, why did he have to pick up the phone and like talk her down?
Let's go to break. We'll come back. We'll pick this up. You are listening to Brian Shields. He is an exceptional person where your business matters. We'll be right back and hear from Brian Shields.
We'll return to Local Biz Now with entrepreneur Joe Vagnone in just a moment on 105.9, 100.7 WSIC.
Good. Can I talk to Brian? Yeah. Can you hear me, Brian?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're on commercial for the live radio, but we are still live on Facebook, YouTube, and all of those stuff. So I apologize cutting you off, but that's what we do for live radio. So
pay the bills, man. Pay the bills.
If you were here, you would see them pointing to 1 minute, 30 seconds, So when we come back, let's finish your your thought process on where you were headed. And then I want to dig into one of the things I really was impressed with, and you probably think it's just everyday life for you, but your skill set and knowledge and experience at this light air, at the top, you know what I mean? And then you've got this experience of actually knowing how to produce the actual numbers. That's a rare treat, right? Not everybody does that. And so I want to talk a little bit about that and how you see the differences and the different choices that people at different levels make, right? And how they come up with that. Because I think the listeners will like that. They will like defining those differences. And you are a unique person to be able to kind of answer that, because most of us, we only see it on TV.
Yeah, I hear that. I definitely hear you on that.
Jojo, how much time we got?
45 seconds.
45 seconds.
And you wrap up at top of the hour, right?
Yes.
Perfecto.
Yeah, matter of fact, that's a hard break. So for us, when we get to the top of the hour, that's a hard break off.
To Local Biz Now with your host, Joe Vagnone, on 105.9, 100.7 WSIC. Local starts here.
Yeah. You are listening to the #1 live talk business radio show in North Carolina, coming to you from Burner Cigar Studio. This is WSIC and Local Biz Now. I am Joe Vagnone, where your business matters. I'm here with Brian Kennedy. He is the founder of Brian Kennedy Global. Do not confuse that with my guest in California, coming to us live, Brian Shields. He has a website, Brian Lee Shields, and I really encourage you to go there. There's some good information on there, and it's just an inspiring website to sort of get an idea and a vision of where Brian Shields has gone. Brian, my friend, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm excited.
So you were describing sort of the height of being at Lehman Brothers with literally sounds to me like your time wasn't your time, right? It sounds to me like they were dictating every moment of what you're going to do.
Listen, when you're at that level, as a partner or an associate or anything in between, you are 100% captive to the capital you've raised. And the firm I was at had $4 or $5 billion under management in one fund, not all of their funds, just one fund. So you can imagine the pressure that puts on the team to make sure that they get it right, consistently, and that there's no time wasted. So I still have a bad habit of checking my phone like every 5 minutes because I think somebody's emailed me and needs something right now.
When they emailing you, was it the actual people with the money that were wanting to make contact with you, or was it your bosses that were doing this? Like, who was putting this pressure?
Oh yeah. So I mean, it like stuff rolls downhill, right? So like I got messages from my boss, and it could range from, hey, can you update these financials or this analysis, to, hey, we're in this meeting and we really need a coffee for this person whose company we're trying to buy. Can you just run out and go get it? And I was like, whatever you need, man. this paycheck looks real good. I'm just going to do what I need to do.
That's right. Okay, so let's move past that, because this is a small business show, right? So I want to bring it down. I listened to some of your other interviews, and the way you describe you learning what small business is all about was intriguing to me, right? We all go through it at some point. Listen, Brian, you and I don't know each other. I got a tagline, baby. I have bought and sold, owned and operated more small businesses than anybody you're going to meet. And when I make that big, bold statement, right, especially to a guy like you that's been around the block, and nowadays, I made that statement 25 years ago. Now there's Shark Tank, and Profit TV, and all that stuff. So I get it. There's a lot of people, but just the statement makes you think he kind of knows, right? He's been around the block. And so very few people impress me, right, when I start doing some research. And you did, and it's because of your skill set to merge large corporate information and knowledge, right, and small business that you learned hands-on, Can you talk a little bit about that and the differences of choices and decisions? Because very few people realize there are different viewpoints, vantage points, which means you make different choices when you have a lot of cash or if you're a small business people and we don't have that cash. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, just as a recent example, I was looking at acquiring this, $50 million revenue business with that private equity firm I used to work at. And we were having a conversation about it and like, hey, they make this much a profit or whatever. And the team asked me, hey, so if you took over this business, what investments would you make, right? And I started talking about it from the amount of cash flow that the business made. And they said, cool. Now think about it. If you had an extra $10 million, what would you do with that? And I was like, give me a day. Let me sleep on that. And I think that hopefully frames the point that I'm getting at, which is, and that you were getting at, which is when you have institutional capital, and there's a range, but like when you have money in hand, you can start to think in not just the acquisition, but the bets you're making around it. So, hey, we have this business. It's really cool. Maybe we should enter into selling into South America. Maybe we should add a new product line. Maybe we should clean up the infrastructure so it just runs better, whatever. But you have time and the privilege of having those decisions at your fingertips. When you're a small business owner, I mean, I've been there, right? Like I owned a business that made less than $5 million of revenue. I was elbows deep. Literally, you can see my sleeves rolled up. I was in it, right? And the decisions you make there can sometimes feel like this is what I have. Like I only have as much money as I'm bringing in, and
Right.
maybe on a monthly basis. And so your ability to think longer term maybe gets stymied a little bit, and you don't have the ability to step out of the business and just look at the big picture to start directing your time and capital in ways that could be more productive. So you can get stuck, and it's tough. Marrying those two relationships and perspectives is tough because, like you said earlier, when I was in that ivory tower, I had no idea how money was made. And like now I understand and respect the entrepreneurs who have started and sustained these businesses because making money is hard. So
and it takes a calculated risk that you don't understand if you already have all that cash, right? When it's your dollar, that's a whole lot harder to want to reinvest it after you just figured out how to make it, right? So there's a completely different view of how and when to reinvest, which we know we all have to do.
Yep, that's exactly right. I mean, I'll tell you, just talking through this, I'm sweating because I feel that pressure again of,
right.
Oh man, we only make X amount of dollars. I know I got to do payroll. And then I only maybe have one or two bets I can try before it's like, look, I don't have more money to try this year.
Right.
So you have to be very thoughtful about doing that. And frankly, like for me, outside of the fact that like I had all this training and stuff, like I've just learned over time, you cannot make decisions in a bubble. So whether it's getting a coach and supporter like a Brian Kennedy or a board of advisors or somebody who's not in the day-to-day that you can just say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, and they can help you zoom out. It's hugely valuable. It's just hugely valuable.
Yeah, and for you, it's funny because I've been advising small business people for years. You really do need an advisory board, somebody to sit down, and they can't be family members because you're going to get the advice from your wife whether you like it or not, right? It's got to be people that know and understand what you're trying to do, and so they will keep you in check, but they'll also push you when it's time to push, because that's the other thing that happens. You find yourself getting scared. You get to these comfort levels and you realize it does require a whole nother investment to go to a new level. And personally, you find yourself not wanting to go there because you know what it's going to do to you personally. So there are personal decisions. It's not like when you're at the ivory tower and you decide, let's do something. It's not you going to going to that new country to start that, right? Where if it's small business, it will be you getting on a plane and going there.
That's right. That's absolutely right. I mean, I'll tell you, the first business I ever bought was a vending machine business. And, on paper, it was a great business. But one thing I learned, Joe, is that I don't like driving. And those businesses require so much driving. And like, in my mind, I was like, oh, here, I'm going to do all this and optimize the product mix and blah, 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 blah. And then the 15th time I had to get in the car to drive to pick up some cash, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I got to stop. So I sold the business, but I learned the lesson that's making the point that you're making, which is when you're up there in the ivory tower, right, you can make these decisions and not necessarily care or experience how it filters through the business, right? And that has real impact because the people on the ground have to execute it. And they may not like driving, or they may not be as efficient doing it in the way that you want them to. And you have to have a respect for that. And that's how I come to owning businesses is I just try to understand how the sausage gets made and make sure that whatever decisions I'm making take into account that we want to make sure the sausage still tastes good and looks good for the person to eat.
So you just stepped into something, Brian. So I have the argument with people all the time about this. I'm curious. I've always believed if you don't have a passion for the industry, stay out of it. You kind of made a pitch for that. So I'm curious, a guy like you that's looking at these different businesses and realize, wow, man, those margins look really good, but that means I got to start a transportation business. Would you think twice about that?
100%. I tell people all the time, I get these calls. Hey, Brian, I got this like cool idea for this industry. I own property, so I should own a property management company. Or I have one rental property that like I moved out of, and now I should own this like Section 8 property management business. And I'm like, hey, man, cool. That looks good on paper. You can convince yourself of anything on paper. But the thing that people need to remember is that, to your point, Joe, you are going to be in the business, either involved or in the day-to-day. And so there has to be as much of a owner business fit as there is like a product market fit. Because if you don't fit in that business, the customers will know, the employees will know, and you will know, and you will be out of there really quickly.
And so that's why I absolutely adore my new friend, Brian Shields. Go to his website, Brian Lead Shields. He will be able to help you so much. Brian, what are you trying to do now, right? Because it looks like you're doing some advising, coaching, and you're still doing investing. So what can we do for you, right? Who's the buyer profile you're looking for?
Yeah, so now we're myself and a partner are in the process of raising a fund to buy a few more businesses. We want to see hardworking entrepreneurs get the fruit of their labor and be able to ride off into the sunset or turn into the elders that help support us as the next generation of entrepreneurs. So we have some money, we're raising some more. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, we could talk about it. But that's next, right? And we're always looking to talk to people who are thinking about selling their business and want to talk to somebody who will give it to them straight. Like I just keep it real with people.
Right. So we've only got a minute, buddy. What advice would you give somebody thinking about buying a small business?
Listen, number one, make sure that you fit the business because you're going to be in it for 10 years. Number two, make sure that your family is on board because the number one question I asked my wife that helped me was, where is the line before I have to actually get a job?
I love that.
It was totally worth it. And number three, just make sure you take care of your mentals because this stuff is hard. It is the most emotionally taxing thing you can possibly do when you are responsible for dozens and dozens of people's paychecks.
Brian, we got to go,
make sure you
buddy.
take care of yourself.
Brian, we got to go. Let's do this again, man. I got to get you back again. Let's do this again.
Welcome it. Thank you.
You are listening to Local Biz Now, where your business matters. We'll see you next week.
Serving you better than